guys today. Do you mind if I start out just by praying for us? Just praying for this moment. God, we thank you so much for your presence here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to think about the nations, and that we have an opportunity to be a part of what you're doing. I pray just for this time right now that you would even deeper connect Sherman Oaks Presbyterian Church to what you're doing in the nations. You would connect me to them to me, and all of us to what you're doing in the nations. We invite you, Lord, to be present in this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I have to be a little honest with you that I'm feeling a little bit nervous right now because my last, most recent speaking experience, a week ago I was speaking somewhere, and I just didn't have time to prepare before I went in there, and when I started talking, it just wasn't going well, and actually while I was talking, people ended up just dispersing while I was still talking, and it just, the first time that ever happened in my life. And then afterwards I talked to the person who was in charge of it, and I said, I'm so sorry that happened, I don't know what happened, and this person looked at me and said, you know, that was so boring, like so boring, and this was real. This really happened. It was a dream I had. It was actually a bad dream, but it felt real. And so I've been trying to recover from that moment all week because in this dream, this person was like, you were so boring. So I'm trying to emerge from that right now. I'm glad that it was just a dream. But mission presentations are classically boring, so I'm like trying to overcome a hurdle here. So I want you to help me walk through it, and we're gonna have my bad dream not come a reality. That's right. That's right. It's exciting to be in partnership with you guys. Sherman Oaks Presbyterian Church. What we do overseas in Tajikistan is only possible because of partnership. It's only possible because of people like you who are involved. And so we have been doing what we're doing, and we've come into partnership with Sherman Oaks for the past 2 years. And what I wanted to do is help you guys understand what it is that you're involved with and what's going on in Tajikistan, because when I think about partnership, I always think of us like the tip of a finger, and the people who are in partnership with us are like the arm, and which means that unless the arm reaches out, then we can't go out. And so I'm excited to share with you guys about Tajikistan. Who had ever heard of Tajikistan before today, or before, I don't know if you heard 2 years ago, but who had ever heard of Tajikistan? You guys knew about Tajikistan? A few people. That's good. I like that. It's not on everybody's map. And so the first thing I want you to do is pull out your phones and look at a map of Tajikistan. I could put a map on there, but it's much more fun to touch a map with your finger and scroll it around. Look at the countries that are around there. If you don't have a smartphone, you get next to somebody who has a smartphone. But just take a look at it, and you can see how it's spelled right there. Tajikistan. So put in your phones, look at around. You guys can see the countries that are around it. Right next to Afghanistan, it's our southern border. We're really grateful that that border is well protected because it's actually pretty safe. It's not anything like Afghanistan. And it's near China, so we have a lot of Chinese working and influencing Tajikistan. It's near some of the other countries you've probably never heard of, like Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan. We have some other countries bordering us. So check it out. It is actually, I think I mentioned this last time, that it's the farthest away from the beach in any other country in the entire world. That's a depressing thought for me, but but yeah, so Tajikistan, a couple things about it. It's the poorest country in Central Asia. So there's a lot of different issues of poverty there, people, lack of access to resources, and the Tajik people group that live there, that make up most of Tajikistan, almost 99% of them are Muslim. Yeah. And in the country, there's maybe between 1,000 and 3,000 Christians at any given time. And That's out of 8 million people. So very, very small believing population in the midst of mostly a Muslim place. It's former Soviet countries. So for those of you guys remember the USSR, that was a part of it. There was the border of the USSR right into before it went to Afghanistan. And so what that means is they speak Russian. A lot of them speak Russian, which is good. We lived in Russia for 4.5 years before we were kicked out. And then when we moved there, we learned Tajik as well. So I actually speak Russian and Tajik. And Tajik is the same as Farsi. So like Persian languages, what they're speaking in Iran. And so I often think to myself, you know, if things don't work out for me in Tajikistan, then don't say it, because I speak Russian right now. So we'll see what happens with that. I always got a career in my back pocket. But yeah, it's a really interesting place to work. And so I want to share with you guys some of the things that are going on there, a little bit about what it's like. It's a very mountainous place, 95% mountains. These are just a couple pictures of the mountains. Next one. And I want to show you guys another picture. This is how we eat. We eat on the floor. And so everybody puts out like these little cushion pads you get to sit on in the middle. Everybody puts out the food. And it's really great actually for sharing the gospel, because, you know, when you're sitting in a chair, I found that it can be kind of uncomfortable, kind of proper. But when you're like, they put all these pillows by you as a guest, and when you're like that guy is like lying down, chilling, just talking about Jesus, it creates this atmosphere where you can sit for hours and encounter people. Next one. Women there are dressed, most of them actually do not wear like the official Islamic outfit. The one in there with the full head covering, that would be what you would typically see a Muslim wearing. And we actually have an interesting kind of Islam there, because in the governmental leaders they would call themselves Muslims, but they're trying to suppress more radical expressions of Islam. So a hijab isn't necessarily a radical expression of Islam, but it's a kind of an expression of a more deeper commitment to Islam. So some of those more deeper commitments they try to squelch out. So you actually can't have a beard until you're 45. And so you can actually have the police arrest you and shave your beard for you, involuntary shaving. They also have, you can't go to Mecca until you're 45 if you're a man. And then for women, you have to have a license to wear the hijab. And so most women would wear what's right to the left of her, with like hair coming out the front and like a headscarf, and then a dress with matching pants. And so that would be a typical thing. That would be a lot of times what my wife would wear to fit in. And so yeah, there's a sense that something that's interesting in Islam is classically seen as Arabic. They really like the Arabic traditions and culture, and the whole Quran is written in Arabic. And so a lot of times they'll try to differentiate themselves if they're not Arabic peoples. They'll say, we're Tajiks, we're not Arabs. And so that's kind of how they'll talk about it. These are maybe more Arab traditions. But in all, it's to try to squelch some of the radical forms of Islam. And so, because we have up to 3,000 people, Tajiks, who are fighting in ISIS right now. And there is a pull, because it's a poor country, and there's the appeal of going and making money, and also going and being a part of something. They're trying to keep people away from those kind of extremes. So most of the people I talk to who are Muslims, interesting fact for you, we'll talk about extremism. They say, you know, it's actually not even written anywhere in the Quran that you should kill somebody. So that's kind of the perspective of Islam that they're told. That's not necessarily true if they were to read the Quran, but that's the type of Islam that's promoted where I live. Go on to the next one. I wanted to show you just a couple pictures. These are people I mentioned last week. I'm not going to retell their stories, but if you guys were here last week, this guy, Bakri, this is the guy who I met in the park who became a follower of Jesus, my good friend. And then the next one, this is the woman who had the dream, the gypsy woman who had the dream where Jesus appeared to her. And then go to the next slide. Press the button. Okay, so this is a guy named Muhammad. Muhammad lives in a village. And Muhammad lives in this village. It's not in the capital city, so it'll be a couple hours from capital city. He lives there, and he grows up, spends most of his time in this village. And put the next one. And the church is close by. You know, maybe there's some churches in Dushanbe in the capital. But by and large, Muhammad has no access to these churches. Has no access to hear about Jesus. And when I was 20 years old, the year 2000, I was serving in South Africa. And when I was serving there, I was serving in the city of Cape Town, and I was on a 6-month missions trip. And while I was there, we were doing evangelism. So we were going on the streets and we were sharing Jesus with people. And while I was sharing with people and doing this missions trip, somebody mentioned to me, said, "Hey, did you know that Franklin Graham said that that Cape Town, South Africa is the most evangelized city in the whole world?" Which means there's been more evangelists who've gone there and done crusades. There's been more outreaches. There are more churches reaching out and sharing the gospel with people. And so here we were coming into the midst of that place, and we were sharing Jesus with people. I felt like I was doing a food stamp campaign in Beverly Hills. You know, I mean, they had a tremendous access to the gospel, and here I was giving them a little bit more. Maybe the 17th time they hear this, they would respond. And it was in that season that I felt God begin to stir something inside of me, because I took this course called the Perspectives course. And it's this course that talks about God as a missionary God. And it talks about the fact that there's 2 billion people in the world who had never heard the gospel. Not just had never heard the gospel, they didn't have access to have somebody share the gospel with them. And that the majority of those were Muslims. And it was in that moment that I said, "God, would you use my life? Would you use my life, and would you take me to those people so that I can tell them about Jesus?" And so this is where we're at right now, is in one of those places. And every day we get to go to these villages. I see God answering that prayer that I put inside my life. The other is this, clean water. Muhammad also lives within 1 to 6 kilometers of a spring coming out of the ground. And, you know, Muhammad near his house would have either a canal or a river that he would be drinking out of that would be polluted water. Or maybe it's so dry in some of the places we go to, they don't even have that, but they maybe buy their water, and that water would have been taken out of most likely a polluted water source. And so this is Muhammad. He lives close to this clean water, this spring coming out of the ground, just pure water coming out of the ground, but he doesn't have access to it because there's not enough resources to get access to that water. And so what we feel like God has called us to do is to take this guy and say, God, to say this isn't okay. It isn't okay that people live with no access to the gospel. It's not okay that people who live close to clean water can't have clean water. And we need to do something about it. And so what we do is we bring access to this guy Muhammad, to the gospel, and we also bring access to clean water. And I want to tell you about a few ways that we do this. The first is prayer. My history, my testimony, if I could sit down with each one of you guys and just share with you my testimony, it would be about this. It would be like, I used to pray this much, and I saw God do like this much in my life and in my ministry. And then there was this season of increase where I began to pray some more, and I saw God begin to do more things. And then there was this calling in my life to a life of radical prayer, to a life of radical fasting. And I found that when I stepped into that place that I felt God calling me to, that He started to do infinitely more in all areas of my life. And so, you know, sometimes I wish that it wasn't like that. Sometimes I wish that this equation wasn't like that. I wish there was some way to like write a book and make it really simpler and, you know, quicker and faster to live a life of impact, you know? That maybe we could just do it and we could just, you know, open up our YouVersion app and like read the verse of the day and all of a sudden be like, whoa, my life was transformed as soon as I started reading the verse of the day. But there's something about living into this, walking in this lifestyle of deep intimacy with Jesus, where we talked about it last time, you know, apart from me, you can do nothing. Where as I stepped in that place, and so as we've gone there, God has called us to a life of deeper prayer. And so, you go to the next slide. We're involved with this prayer community, and when we went, they were doing just like one meeting a week, and God has, or a couple of meetings, and God has used our time there to help expand. This is a group of foreigners, like Americans and things like that, expats we call them. And we gather now several times a week, and there's like 10 different times a week that they're gathering to pray and intercede. And even once a month, on a Friday night, we get together, we start at 10 p.m., and we just go until 4 a.m. and they just extended to 5:30 a.m. And I was like, I don't know about that. That was the next level, and I'm going back. I have to decide whether I want to be involved in that anymore. But we were going from 10 a.m. to going for like 6 to 8 hours, basically, in the middle of the night, worshiping Jesus and praying that God would break into Tajikistan. And so what we've seen is that God listens to our prayers. He says, ask and you'll receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. And anything Jesus says is a promise, and it's going to happen. And so we're trying to tap into that. But one thing I'll tell you, this is a small note about self-reliance in my own life, is that one thing I've seen in my own life is that, when I see a problem in my life, when I see an issue, something I want to have, I need God for, I'll enter into prayer, or I'll fast, or I'll really go after this thing. And that's been kind of my response. I'm like walking around Tajikistan, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are so lost. There's so many issues. There's so much, people don't have clean water. And I just, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go into prayer. And I came home on furlough this time. We have about a couple months to reflect and to connect with people like you. And I felt that as I got out of there, that I was praying one day, and I felt like the Lord said this to me. Out of one of the words of Jesus, he says, my burden is light, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And I just had this sense that sometimes as we're going around, this feeling of, we're dealing with people who are in witchcraft, or you go into a village and they have this shrine there, and there's no believers there, and if you have any kind of little ounce of spiritual openness, you'll just feel the heaviness in that place. And I felt like God saying, but that's not how it's supposed to feel. And Johnny, there's something missing in your walk with me, and that's other people actively praying and interceding for you. Wow. That there's a certain amount that we can accomplish in prayer ourselves, right? Like we can go after something, but that there's something about calling other people to pray for us that can bring breakthrough in an area where we've been waiting to see breakthrough for a really long time. And so what I wanted to do is to go to the next slide. And what I've been doing while I've been home is inviting people to be intercessors, which means people who pray for Tajikistan. Yeah. And so in the back there's a sign up. And what I'm basically inviting you to do is one of two things. One is you can just get our newsletter, but our newsletter only comes out every 2 or 3 months. And it's just like it's a summary of all the things that we do. And we know people have been praying, engaging on that. But what I want to invite you, if you have any desire to be involved in praying for the nations and praying for a nation, it would be to sign up and become one of the intercessors for Tajikistan for our ministry on a weekly basis. And what I'm asking people to do is commit to 2 minutes a week. And that's we're going to send you an email once a week, and it'll come on the day you signed up. And it'll basically just be answered prayers and prayer requests. Very short, something that you can just access. You take 30 seconds to read. Take 30 seconds to read it. Take a minute, half to pray for it. If you're like a prayer person, you want to pray more into it. But the commitment is 2 minutes. And I just believe that as we as a community, because the first prayer request would be we're praying for God to bring a prayer movement and a disciple-making movement to Tajikistan. That as we press in as a community into this prayer request, there's 20 people in that prayer room, but I'm just praying that God would raise up a huge prayer team, that we are going to see God transform things. So I want to invite you. I am in need. I'm so grateful for SOPC's financial partnership with us. And what I want to invite you guys to the next level is to be in prayer in a more specific and tangible way for us. So I'd love for you guys to sign up for that on your way out. You can sign up just for our newsletter, but also invite you, if you want to sign up for that prayer team. Next thing is people. I've gotten the amazing opportunity to partner with 2 local Tajik guys. One thing I found is that when I walk into a room in Tajikistan, and I walk into that place, the first thing they see is American, white, male, and it's really, and that's that box that I speak through, everything is filtered through that for them. So when I walk into the room and I'm sharing about Jesus, and I'm like, he loves you, he's so good, usually, a lot of times they get to the end of that sentence and they're like, that's great. How do I get a visa to America? Or how do can you get me a job? Which are legitimate and valid questions for somebody who is living in poverty and somebody who lives in the most amazing place you see all our movies. That's a legitimate way for them to see me. And so what I found is that when I do work with Tajik local partners, it's totally different when a Tajik walks out into the room and talks about Jesus. For one, when they see me, they expect me to believe in Jesus. Like, of course you believe in Jesus. You were raised in America where everyone's Christian. But they don't expect their Tajik friend, when 99% of your friends are Muslims, and he starts talking about Jesus, think, what's going on here? So what I want to do is I want to share just a little quick video. It's 3 minutes long. And what I did, I asked my guys who I work with, I said, would you tell me your testimony? So they made a little phone video of themselves giving testimony. Yeah, these guys are amazing. I work with them. We work for an NGO, and that's a nonprofit. We call it NGO Overseas. And what we do is we go with these two guys, and we have a little team, the three of us, and we go into villages, and we look for places where they need clean water. And so the next part, go on to resources. We come to these places where, in this one village, next one, for instance, actually let's just skip this one, go to the next one. There's like a gallon of water per second just coming out of the ground. That's a lot of water. And it comes out of like 4 or 5 places, and it forms like a little mini stream, and then it goes right into cow pasture. And so it's immediately contaminated. It's immediately made something that you wouldn't want to drink. And then it goes all the way down this valley, about 2.4 kilometers, and then once it's going through the village, it looks like this. And so here you have this village with clean water 2.4 kilometers away. And what we're doing is, go to the next slide, we're helping them build a pipeline to get it from here to there. And it's exciting the way we do it because it's in partnership with the village, and so we don't just go in and pay for it and just do it ourselves, bring a big tractor in and make it all happen. We just pay for a portion of the materials, so the materials that are needed to get it from the spring to the village, and then they do all the work. They do all the labor, and so they show up and they dig this 2.4 kilometer ditch. Sometimes it'll be up to 6 kilometers. And then we pay for a really small portion of the parts for getting all the way throughout the village, but they pay for the pipes. And so they are brought together, the village is brought together to do this project that's going to impact everybody. And it gives them an opportunity to see, hey, when we come together, we can actually make something happen. And so in the midst of that, all day long, you're rubbing shoulders with all these people that I had been thinking about when I was 20. The people who have never heard about Jesus. And there's a saying in Tajik, work a little bit, drink a little tea. Work a little bit, drink a little tea. I've tried to break that principle before by we'd go in and we're just kind of really working hard on a project one day, and my Tajik partner pulled me aside to share with me that principle. Because Johnny, we don't just work, we work and then we drink a little tea. And so during these drink a little tea points, there's abundant opportunities to share with people about Jesus. And so then you have these guys who've been actually going out the whole time I've been home. They're still going out. They're working on this project. They're sending me updates about what's going on and updates about people that they've been able to share Jesus with. And God has been igniting these guys for the kingdom. I had actually a dream when I first got to Tajikistan. I've been there for about 2 months. And I was really busy with language learning. I was really thinking about it. And then I had this dream. And in this dream, I have a meeting with 2 significant leaders of prayer movements in America. And I'm asking them about how to build up prayer in Tajikistan. And as I'm talking to them, I'm asking them, how do we do this? How do we build this here? And they don't really answer a lot of my questions. But one of them looks at me and he says, and he looks and he points at a Tajik guy. And he was a Tajik believer, and he points at him and he said, you get him into the house of prayer and you see what he becomes. You get him into a lifestyle of prayer and worship and you see what that person becomes. And that guy was named Agora, which means, in Greek, I looked it up later, it means gathering place. So I knew that it was about when the Tajik church would come into the place of prayer and worship, that they would be transformed. And so working with Jurabek, this guy, I've shared stories with you guys just about how God will sometimes share things with me about other people. And so this guy had never done any of those things, but we just started to get into God's presence. We just started to pray together. Because when we get together, we come together, our work day, and it says the apostles, they had 2 things that they did. They had the ministry of prayer and the ministry of the word. So we come together, we just start it in prayer. And then we go out into these villages, and he gets into that atmosphere, and God starts to speak to him about people. And so we go to places, and he'll look at people and be like, is your like brother's name Jamshed or your son's name Jamshed? They're like, yeah. Like, how'd you know? Are you a fireman? And like start telling these people all about, and I asked him, I was like, did you do this before? And he's like, no, I'd never done any of this before. But when he got into God's presence, he got shifted into a different person. And so that's what we want to see happen. We want to see Tajiks. We want to see people who even have known Jesus for years getting into the presence of God and being completely transformed. And I just want to end on this last slide on the kingdom. God's given us opportunity to go forward, to go into a children's hospital, to basically go into a cancer ward, and we go and we play a little song on the guitar, and then we have an opportunity to pray for kids with cancer. I have a heart for the healing ministry, and I was looking for people to heal. And I decided, they all just get together in this one place.
Help us spread the message. Click on the donate button below or go to shermanoakspc.org/donate.